The golden-caged champagne flutes clinked like tiny bells throughout the Plaza Hotel ballroom. Natalie readjusted the thin strap of her burgundy dress, a vintage piece she had found in a consignment shop in Brooklyn. The fabric hugged her figure perfectly, elegant without trying too hard. Around her, New York's elite mingled in their designer gowns and custom tuxedos. Discussing stock portfolios and vacation homes in the Hamptons, Natalie did not belong here, and she knew it. But Cameron Blake, her boyfriend of 5 years, insisted she attend these events. He said it was good for his image to have an educated, cultured woman by his side. What he really meant was that she made him look refined, polished. Legitimate Cameron stood across the room, laughing too loudly at a joke told by Richard Thornton, a senior partner at his investment firm. Cameron's hand movements were exaggerated, his smile too wide. Natalie recognized the signs immediately. He had been drinking since they arrived 2 hours ago. His mood was shifting from charming to aggressive. She had seen this pattern before. The tight smile when she said something he deemed foolish. The cutting remarks disguised as jokes. The way he would grip her elbow, just a bit too tightly, when steering her away from conversations he found boring. For 5 years, Natalie had told herself that Cameron was ambitious, driven, that his intensity was simply passion for success. But tonight something felt different. Maybe it was the way he had snapped at her in the taxi, criticizing her for choosing flats instead of heels. Maybe it was how he had introduced her to his colleagues as just a museum girl with a dismissive wave. Or maybe Natalie was simply tired of being small in a relationship that made her feel invisible. The breaking point, the trouble started near the dessert table. Natalie had been chatting with Margaret Chen, a kind older woman who served on the board of several arts foundations. They were discussing a newly discovered Rembrandt sketch when Cameron appeared. His face flushed from whiskey and wounded pride. "Natalie, we need to leave," he announced, not asked. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. "Cameron, the event is not over yet," Natalie replied quietly, embarrassed by his abruptness. "I was just speaking with Mrs. Chen about the new Renaissance exhibit." "Nobody cares about your little paintings," Cameron said, louder than necessary. Several heads turned. "I have been networking all night while you stand in corners talking about dead artists. This is supposed to be about my career." Margaret Chen excused herself tactfully, but the damage was done. Other guests were watching now, sensing drama the way sharks sense blood in water. Natalie felt her face burn with humiliation. "Cameron, you are being inappropriate. Can we please discuss this outside?" "I am being inappropriate." Cameron laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the ornate ceiling. "You show up to a black tie event looking like a schoolteacher. You bore everyone with your museum talk, and I am the problem." Natalie's hands trembled, but her voice remained steady. "I think you have had too much to drink. Let me get our coats." "Do not tell me what I have had." Cameron grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make his point. "You always do this. You always make me look bad in front of important people." A photographer from the New York Social Register had materialized nearby, his camera raised. The flash went off once, twice. Cameron released Natalie's wrist and turned on the photographer with fury. "Delete those photos right now," Cameron demanded, stepping forward aggressively. But Natalie had stopped listening. Something inside her had snapped clean through, like a wire pulled too tight for too long. She looked at Cameron, really looked at him, and saw a man who had spent 5 years making her feel less than she was. A man who measured her worth by how well she reflected his ambitions. She thought about the gallery opening she had missed because Cameron needed her to attend his office party. The PhD program she had postponed because he said it would take time away from supporting his career. The friends who had stopped calling because Cameron always found reasons they were not good enough. "The moment of freedom, Cameron," Natalie said, her voice cutting through his argument with the photographer. "We are done." He spun around, confused. "What?" "I said we are done. This relationship is over." Cameron's expression shifted from confusion to anger to something like panic. "You cannot be serious. You are overreacting. I have had a stressful week, okay? I will apologize tomorrow." "No," Natalie said simply. "You will not, because I will not be there to receive it." She turned to walk away, but Cameron followed, his voice rising. "You are going to regret this, Natalie. You think you can do better than me? You are a nobody without me." a museum curator making $40,000 a year. I gave you access to this world. I made you relevant. They had reached the entrance of the plaza now, and a crowd had gathered, pretending not to watch while watching everything. The photographer was still there, his camera clicking steadily. Natalie paused at the door and turned back one final time. The cold November air rushed in, clearing her head. She looked at Cameron, his expensive suit, his handsome face twisted with entitlement and rage, and she felt nothing but relief. "Thank you," she said clearly. "Thank you for finally showing me exactly who you are." Then she did something she had not done in 5 years. She smiled. Not a polite smile or a nervous smile, but a real, genuine smile of absolute liberation. It was the smile of someone who had just dropped a heavy weight they did not know they were carrying. The smile of a prisoner walking out of a cell they had built for themselves. The photographer caught it perfectly. The flash illuminated Natalie's face at the exact moment of her transformation. Capturing the precise second, she stopped being Cameron, Blake's accessory, and became herself again. She walked down the steps of the Plaza Hotel into the freezing New York night, hailed a taxi, and disappeared into the city lights. Behind her, Cameron stood on the steps, shouting her name, looking exactly like what he was, a small, angry man who had just lost something he never deserved to have in the first place. By morning, the photo would be everywhere. But Natalie did not know that yet. For now, she sat in the back of a taxi, watching the city blur past, and felt more alive than she had in years. The viral sensation, the photograph, appeared on page 6 before Natalie even woke up the next morning. Museum curator walks away smiling after public breakup with investment banker Cameron Blake. Read the headline. The image showed everything. Cameron's red face in the background, mid-shout, while Natalie stood in the foreground, serene and radiant, adjusting her earring with that mysterious smile. By noon, the photo had been shared 40,000 times on social media. By evening, it had become a cultural phenomenon. Women across the internet hailed Natalie as an icon of self-respect and dignity. Memes flourished. Think pieces were written. The smile heard round the world, trended on Twitter for 3 consecutive days. Natalie had turned off her phone and spent the weekend at her friend Rachel's apartment in Queens, processing what had happened. When she finally looked at the news on Monday morning, she was stunned by the response. Her private moment of liberation had become public property. Dissected and celebrated by millions of strangers, Cameron, meanwhile, was not handling the attention well. His firm received dozens of calls from reporters. His colleagues whispered in hallways. Worst of all, women who had previously found him charming now looked at him with disgust. The photograph had exposed something ugly, and no amount of spin could undo it. He tried calling Natalie 17 times that first week. Then he tried showing up at her apartment building, only to discover she had moved out. Her museum colleagues said she had taken an indefinite leave of absence. Her few remaining social media accounts went dark. Cameron began to panic. Not because he loved her, but because he needed to control the narrative. And Natalie had vanished completely. Enter Dominic Ashford. What Cameron did not know was that 3 days after the breakup, Natalie had received an unexpected email. The sender was someone named Lillian Foster, executive assistant to Dominic Ashford, founder of Ashford Industries. The email was brief but intriguing. Misread, Mr. Ashford was impressed by your resilience and grace under pressure. He is seeking a curator for his private art collection in Monaco and would like to discuss the position with you. All expenses paid. Please respond if interested. Natalie had almost deleted it, assuming it was spam or some cruel joke. But curiosity won out. She researched Dominic Ashford and discovered he was not just wealthy, but legendary. At 43, he had built a technology empire from nothing, then pivoted to renewable energy and real estate. Unlike most billionaires, he avoided the spotlight obsessively. There were fewer than a dozen photographs of him in existence. His art collection, however, was famous among collectors. Ashford owned pieces that museums would kill for, including 2 lost Caravaggios and an entire floor of modernist works. If the offer was genuine, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. Natalie accepted the interview, half expecting it to fall through. Instead, 2 days later, she found herself on a private jet to Monaco. Still, somewhat dazed by the sudden turn her life had taken, the obsidian-life Dominic Ashford was not what Natalie expected. He met her personally at the nice airport, driving a modest Range Rover rather than sending a chauffeur. He was tall and lean, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples and eyes that assessed everything with quiet intelligence. He dressed simply in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, expensive but understated. "Reed," he said, offering his hand. "Thank you for coming. I apologize for the unusual nature of this invitation." His voice was deep and measured, with a faint accent Natalie could not quite place. British schooling mixed with something else, perhaps Spanish or Italian from his mother's side. "Please, call me Natalie," she replied, shaking his hand. "And I should be thanking you. Though I admit I am curious why you've reached out to me specifically." Dominic smiled slightly as he loaded her single suitcase into the vehicle. "I have been following your work at the Metropolitan Museum for some time. Your research on Renaissance restoration techniques is groundbreaking. When I saw what happened at the plaza, I thought perhaps you might be ready for a change of scenery." They drove along the coast, the Mediterranean glittering impossibly blue in the afternoon sun. Dominic's villa was perched on a cliff overlooking the sea. All white stone and glass filled with light and art. The collection was breathtaking. Natalie spent the first 3 days simply cataloging and photographing pieces, lost in the work she loved, but it was the conversations with Dominic that surprised her most. Unlike Cameron, who had dismissed her expertise as a boring hobby, Dominic engaged deeply with everything she said. He asked thoughtful questions, challenged her interpretations respectfully, and listened as though her words actually mattered. "You have a gift for seeing what others miss," Dominic told her one evening as they stood before a Rothko in his gallery. "That is rare." Natalie felt something shift inside her, a recognition that this was what respect felt like. This was what it meant to be valued for your mind, not just your ability to make someone else look good. The European tour, what began as a 2-week consultation, stretched into a month. Then, too, Dominic needed to visit his properties across Europe to assess art installations and security systems. And he asked Natalie to accompany him as his curator. They traveled to Santorini, where Dominic owned a cliffside compound, then to Vienna for an auction at Sotheby's, then to his private yacht, the Obsidian, which cruised the Aegean Sea for a week while Natalie examined a newly acquired collection of Greek antiquities. The paparazzi found them in Santorini. A long-range lens caught them having lunch at a seaside taverna. Natalie laughing at something Dominic had said, completely at ease. The photograph was nothing scandalous, just 2 people enjoying a meal, but the internet erupted anyway. "Mystery billionaire spotted with smiling breakup girl in Greece," the headlines screamed. "Cameron Blake's ex upgrades to mogul." From museum curator to Monaco, Natalie Reed's Cinderella story. The speculation was wild and largely inaccurate. Natalie and Dominic were not romantically involved, though there was an undeniable connection growing between them. It was something deeper than attraction, a meeting of minds that both found intoxicating after years of being intellectually isolated. Dominic, who had been married briefly in his 20s to a woman who wanted his money more than his company, had grown cynical about relationships. Natalie, emerging from 5 years of being diminished, was rediscovering her own worth. Neither was rushing into anything, content to let whatever was happening between them develop naturally. But to the outside world, and especially to Cameron Blake, it looked like a fairy tale romance. Cameron's descent back in New York, Cameron was spiraling. The photographs from Europe felt like personal attacks. He became obsessed with tracking Natalie's movements, spending hours on social media looking for clues. His work performance declined. He snapped at clients. His boss at the investment firm called him in for a serious conversation about his focus and professionalism. "You need to let this go, Cameron," his colleague Jeff warned over drinks one night. "You are becoming the obsessed ex-boyfriend. It is not a good look." But Cameron could not let it go. In his mind, Natalie's success was a direct insult to him. She was supposed to be broken, supposed to come crawling back. Instead, she was thriving in ways he could not comprehend. The woman he had considered beneath him was now dining with one of the most powerful men in the world. He hired a private investigator named Dennis Wolfe to dig up information on Dominic Ashford, looking for scandals, bankruptcies, anything he could leak to the press. But Ashford was clean, almost suspiciously so. His business dealings were transparent. His personal life was a locked vault. The only interesting detail Wolfe found was that Ashford never discussed his family background and had legally changed his surname at age 18 from something unpronounceable. Cameron's next move was more desperate. He reached out to gossip columnist Patricia Vale, known for her vicious takedowns of public figures. He fed her a story suggesting that Natalie was a gold digger who had orchestrated the entire Plaza incident to attract a wealthier target. The column ran in the New York Post. Did museum maven manufacture her viral moment? It was full of insinuations and anonymous sources, clearly designed to damage Natalie's reputation. But the piece backfired spectacularly. The public rallied around Natalie even harder. Women's groups condemned the column as victim-blaming. The backlash was so severe that Patricia Vale issued a rare apology and retraction, and Cameron's name, leaked by someone at the Post, became attached to the smear campaign. His reputation, already damaged, was now in tatters. The return it was late spring when Natalie finally returned to New York. She had accepted a permanent position with Ashford Industries, overseeing the acquisition and restoration of art for Dominic's various properties worldwide. The job came with a salary 3 times what she had made at the museum, an apartment in Dominic's Tribeca building, and complete creative control over projects. More importantly, she had spent 4 months rediscovering herself. The woman who stepped off Dominic's jet at Teterboro Airport was not the same person who had fled the plaza in November. She carried herself differently now, with quiet confidence and purpose. Dominic had traveled with her, though he stayed carefully in the background, letting Natalie have her moment. Their relationship had evolved into something real during the European tour, though they kept it private. What mattered was that they were partners in every sense. To people who challenged and supported each other equally, the art world was buzzing about Natalie's return. She had been invited to speak at a major fundraiser at the Guggenheim Museum, discussing the future of private art conservation. It was the kind of event that would have once terrified her, but now she looked forward to it. Cameron, of course, heard about her return. He secured an invitation to the Guggenheim event through a client determined to confront Natalie face to face. In his delusional mind, he still believed he could win her back, or at least make her see that she owed him something for the years they had spent together. He had no idea that he was walking into his own final humiliation. The Guggenheim Gala. The Guggenheim Museum spiraled upward like a white nautilus shell, its circular interior filled with New York's cultural elite. Natalie stood near the top level, looking down at the crowd gathering below. She wore a stunning navy dress that Dominic had commissioned from a designer in Milan, simple and elegant, making her look like exactly what she was, a serious professional at the top of her field. Dominic stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. "Nervous?" he asked quietly. "Not anymore," Natalie replied truthfully. 6 months ago, this crowd would have intimidated her. Now she recognized them for what they were, just people, no more or less worthy of respect than anyone else. "Good," Dominic said, "because what you are about to announce will change everything."
Natalie smiled.
They had been planning this for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Tonight was that moment. The program began with the usual speeches and acknowledgments. Then it was Natalie's turn. She walked to the podium with steady steps, looking out at the sea of faces below. She spotted Cameron immediately, standing near the back, his expression a mixture of hope and desperation that made her feel nothing but pity. "Good evening," Natalie began, her voice clear and strong. "6 months ago, I walked away from a life that was slowly suffocating me. I thought I was giving up security and stability. Instead, I discovered that I was gaining something far more valuable, myself." The crowd was silent, attentive. This was not the speech they had been expecting. "Tonight, I am proud to announce the launch of the Reed Foundation for Women in Arts," Natalie continued. "Thanks to the generous funding from Ashford Industries, this foundation will provide grants, mentorship, and professional support to women working in art history, curation, and restoration. We will focus particularly on women who have been told they are not enough, who have been diminished by partners or institutions, who need someone to believe in their potential. The applause was thunderous, but Natalie was not finished. I also want to address something that has been discussed extensively in the media, she said, her tone shifting slightly. There have been suggestions that my success over the past 6 months is somehow calculated, that I am a gold digger or an opportunist. Let me be clear. I did not leave my previous relationship for money or status. I left because I deserved better than being someone's accessory. Her eyes found Cameron in the crowd. He stood frozen, his face pale. And I want to thank the person who made that abundantly clear to me, Natalie said. Because sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are. That clarity, painful as it was, set me free. The crowd erupted again, many people standing. They understood exactly who she was talking about. And the message was unmistakable. Natalie had not just survived her public humiliation, she had transformed it into fuel for an extraordinary reinvention, the confrontation after the speeches. During the cocktail reception, Cameron made his move. He pushed through the crowd with the determination of a drowning man reaching for a life raft. "Natalie," he said, grabbing her elbow as she spoke with a group of curators. "We need to talk." Natalie turned slowly, her expression neutral. Dominic, who had been standing nearby, moved closer, but did not interfere. He trusted Natalie to handle this her way. "Cameron," Natalie acknowledged. "I did not realize you were interested in art conservation." "Do not do this," Cameron said, his voice strained. "Do not pretend like we are strangers. We were together for 5 years." "Yes, we were," Natalie agreed calmly. "And for most of those years, you made me feel small and insignificant. So I am curious what you think we have to discuss now." Cameron glanced around, aware that people were watching. He lowered his voice. "I made mistakes, okay? I was stressed, dealing with a lot of pressure at work. But what you are doing now, parading around with this billionaire, it is just revenge. You are trying to hurt me." Natalie almost laughed. "Cameron, you think this is about you? My career, my foundation, my life. You think I built all of this just to make you feel bad?" "I know you, Natalie," Cameron insisted. "You were nothing before me. I introduced you to this world." "No," Natalie said, her voice sharp now. "You introduced me to your world. A world where people are valued by their net worth and their connections. Where women are accessories meant to enhance men's status. That is not the world I choose to live in anymore." Dominic stepped forward now, his presence commanding. "Mr. Blake, I believe the lady has made herself clear. You should leave." Cameron turned on him, months of resentment boiling over. "And who are you exactly? Another rich guy who thinks he can buy whatever he wants? She is going to get bored of you too, just like she got bored of me." "I did not get bored," Natalie interjected coldly. "I got free. There is a difference. You know what I think?" Cameron said, his voice rising. "I think you planned the whole thing. The breakup, the photo, all of it. You saw an opportunity, and you took it." The crowd around them had gone completely silent now. Museum security was moving in, but Dominic held up a hand, stopping them. "Let him finish," Dominic said quietly. "I want to hear this." Cameron was beyond reason now, 6 months of frustration pouring out. She manipulated everyone. Made me look like the villain when all I did was have one bad night after a stressful week. And now she is living this fantasy life while I am a joke on the internet. Natalie looked at him with something like sadness. "Cameron, you made yourself look like a villain. I did not force you to grab my wrist in public. I did not make you call me boring and irrelevant. I did not create your character. I just stopped pretending it was better than it actually was." "We could have worked it out," Cameron said, and there was genuine desperation in his voice now. "If you had just given me another chance." "I gave you 5 years of chances," Natalie replied. 5 years of overlooking disrespect, of making myself smaller so you could feel bigger, of pretending that your ambition justified your cruelty. I am done giving you chances." The final truth security was moving in now, ready to escort Cameron out. But before they could reach him, Dominic spoke up. "Mr. Blake, before you go, I want to tell you something," Dominic said. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "I have been in business for 20 years. I have negotiated with dictators and corporate raiders, with people who would destroy entire companies for profit. And in all that time, I've learned one fundamental truth. How you treat people who cannot help you reveals who you really are." He paused, making sure Cameron was listening. "Natalie could not help your career. She was not wealthy or connected, so you treated her as disposable. That tells me everything I need to know about your character," Dominic continued. "When I met Natalie, I did not see an opportunity. I saw a brilliant mind being wasted on someone too insecure to appreciate it. Hiring her was not charity. It was the best business decision I have made in years." Cameron's face was red now. Humiliated before a crowd of New York's most influential people. "So no," Dominic finished. "She did not manipulate anyone. She simply stopped accepting less than she deserved. That you see that as manipulation says more about you than it does about her." Security took Cameron's arms then, firmly but not roughly, and began walking him toward the exit. As he was led away, he turned back one last time. "You will regret this, Natalie," he shouted. "Both of you will." Natalie watched him go with no anger, no satisfaction, just a profound sense of closure. When he disappeared through the doors, she turned to Dominic. "Thank you," she said, "for letting me handle that my way, always," Dominic replied, taking her hand. Though I did enjoy the ending, the crowd around them began to disperse, the drama over. But several people approached Natalie to offer support, including the director of the Guggenheim herself. "Yes, that took courage," the director said, "and grace. I hope you know you have a place in this community, whenever and however you want it." New beginnings 3 months later, Natalie stood in the newly opened Reed Foundation offices in Soho. The space was bright and modern, filled with young women working on research projects, restoration techniques, and grant applications. The foundation had received over 2,000 applications in its first month alone, from women all over the world who had been told they were not good enough. Too old, too inexperienced, too ambitious, Natalie had hired a staff of 12, all women who shared her vision of creating a more inclusive art world. They worked with museums to place interns, with universities to fund scholarships, with restoration labs to provide training. It was exhausting and fulfilling in ways Natalie had never experienced. Dominic visited often, though he was careful to let Natalie run the foundation independently. Their relationship had deepened into something solid and real, built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. They were talking about the future now, about what it might look like to build a life together that honored both of their ambitions. One afternoon, Natalie received an unexpected letter. It was from Cameron, postmarked from a rehabilitation facility in Connecticut. She almost threw it away unread, but curiosity won out. The letter was surprisingly honest. Cameron wrote about hitting rock bottom after the Guggenheim incident, about losing his job and finally recognizing his problems with alcohol and control. He was in therapy, working through years of insecurity masked as arrogance. He did not ask for forgiveness or a second chance. He simply acknowledged that he had been wrong, that he had hurt her, and that he was trying to become a better person. Natalie read the letter twice, then filed it away. She might respond someday, might not. But either way, Cameron's journey was no longer her responsibility. He would have to find his own path to redemption. The Smile revisited a year after the Plaza Hotel incident. A journalist from The New Yorker requested an interview with Natalie. The article would be part of a series on women redefining success after trauma. Natalie agreed, though she was selective about what she shared. Near the end of the interview, the journalist asked about the photograph, the famous smile. "Do you regret that moment becoming so public?" The journalist asked. Natalie thought for a long moment before answering. "No," she said finally. "I regret that it took me 5 years to get to that moment. I regret all the times I did not smile, did not stand up for myself, did not walk away when I should have. But that specific moment, that was the first moment of my real life. Everything before was just preparation. And now?" the journalist asked. "Are you happy?" Natalie looked around her office, at the photos of foundation grantees on her walls, at the view of Lower Manhattan through her windows. She thought about Dominic, waiting to take her to dinner after this interview. She thought about the research project she was leading on Renaissance techniques. She thought about the young curator she was mentoring who reminded her so much of her younger self. "Yes," Natalie said simply. "I am happy. Not because of where I am or who I am with, but because I finally know who I am. That is worth more than any fairy tale ending." The article ran 2 months later with the headline, "The Power of Walking Away: How One Smile Changed a Life." It featured the original Plaza photograph alongside a new photo of Natalie in her foundation office, smiling the same smile. But now everyone understood what that smile really meant. It was not the smile of revenge or triumph over an ex-boyfriend. It was the smile of self-recognition, of a woman finally seeing her own worth. It was the smile of freedom, and that, Natalie knew, was the only kind of happy ending that truly mattered.